State Representative Tacky Chan of Quincy is joining us for what will be the last Tacky Talk of 2025. Tacky, how are you?
Hey, good to see you, Joe. And actually, it's a wacky Wednesday.
That's right. Even that's different. We're usually a Tuesday or a Thursday.
Yeah, slate schedule change for the final show of us together for 2025, and it's been a great 2025 together, talking about all kinds of things, and for different reasons for both of us. 2025 was really good and also really rough. Mostly on the personal issues, not necessarily the work related issues. And I do know we talk about politics and business and things locally and things nationally, internationally, but also we have some normal life, as I like to say, and all of us have our different challenges at home too.
Right, right. And I know you're going over some turnover with your staff too at the end of the year here.
Yes, Maeve, somebody may communicate over the years, has moved on to the Mass Office of Victim Assistance as the policy director. She was with me for what, 9 3/4 years, give or take. And she has been wonderful with me since she was my only aide. And she elevated her from an aide to basically chief of staff. Staff director is the official position for the purposes of payroll. But my chief of staff running an office and crash coursing really quickly a lot of situations that none of us expect us to be in. People don't realize that I'm a midterm chair change, meaning domino shifted in July of 2017, and it resulted in me getting the chairmanship I'm in today. And there was a state committee staff went with the former chair to the new chair, new staff, a new committee. So Jen Benson left this committee to go to another committee. She was reassigned and she took staff with her. We weren't prepared for that. So we had to do mid on the fly, try to work with less people to make things happen. And we had also National Conference state legislators were in that year with the Asian Caucus Party. It has actually a longer name, but we didn't know we were supposed to do that until the May of that year to try to put a party together for 150 people. That was a scramble. And then we had to try to find some. We just had a new hire, my Emily, our good friend Emily, who also worked with me for about 3 or so years. She was also a new hire. So a new hire, a new chair, party we didn't expect to put together. And we were working on a lot of issues that year, data breach issues, for example, when data's lost, it's data breach. The breacher, the person that's been breached or the company's been breached has to provide certain services as a result of the breach and do notification to those who've been breached. So, we had that kind of bill that year, which actually I wrote the first version in 2006, actually. So it was a decade later, I was back working on the same issue again. So yeah. And then, obviously been on this committee. We got through a pandemic together. We got through several staff reshufflings. Um, we've been through a speakers change, and we've been together for a lot of different challenges, not just necessarily just public policy, but as I said at the beginning, we have our own lives and we have different personal issues, and we work through a lot of different matters that are challenging for any family, not just us personally, but also in our staff. And I tell folks that it's a small office, and you have to work together, and its leadership is very important. And Maeve provided a very good leadership to the point that I am not sure actually am I allowed to make any decisions when she was there.
You have to check with May first, right?
It was back with May first. So and we have a different style of how to do things. There is a top-down style with this business, but it's also very collaborative. And I think that works well as both a working style, but also, from my standpoint, a teaching moment for everybody in the office, will be public policy or just plain old politics.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And people come to the state house and have a passion to work there. The pay isn't great, but if you're there for the pay, you're there for the wrong reason.
Right.
It is about, you want to learn about politics and public policy. And generally, you just want to look at public policy, you pretty much can go to a lot of other places, to be honest with you, whether it be executive branch, lobbying teams, special interest groups, different think tanks, education. I mean, you can do public policy, but you want to learn politics, you really have to be inside the state house to get up close personal. And you guys all know I've been watching this business for 30 years now, actually 31 in January, where I've been literally observing, local politics, state and federal. And I think I have a few lessons to pass along every time something happens internally to building, or even not inside the sales, whether it be Boston City Hall, or Worcester City Hall, or Quincy City Hall, or something happening in the town of Stoughton or the town of Randolph. We can always talk about something happening in a smaller community too. So all politics is local, all politics is different. But I mean, that's kind of one of the unique aspects of working with Statos as a person that was a Statos staffer for and an intern for over a dozen years.
Sure. So are you chairing the same committee next year, Techie?
Yeah, no change committee assignment next year. We do sadly have an opening. Anne Margaret Ferrante, we talked about this about 2 weeks ago, had passed away. She's direct from Gloucester. She's actually just a little older than I am. She died of pancreatic cancer, a long battle, 5 years. And she was elected in 2000, class of 2009. And then she also worked in the State House too. She worked for Senator Bruce Tarr for a brief moment back in the mid 90s for a few years. And yeah, she's a Democrat, worked for a minority party Republican senator, and they're the best of friends. Again, politics, the D and R in front of your name doesn't dictate who your friends and who they're not. And she's a great person, fighter. And she's, they said, just, we're both the same age. And that opens up the vice chairman of Ways and Means position, which the speaker can decide to fill or not fill this cycle. And if he does and tries to remove another chair, it could cause not a major chair shuffle, but it could create a minor chair shuffle.
Sure.
Yeah. On the good front, during chair shuffles, if they're point where the committee workload's reduced because of our accelerated reporting schedule, it may not cause too much disruption.
Okay.
On a chair shuffle, but we'll see what the speaker wants to do. I mean, there's been no indications yet from the speaker is in a rush to replace that position. But it also means that next year, for 2027 cycle, there's an opening somewhere.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So for you, Jackie, personally, what were some of the legislative highlights in 2025, that you feel good about, that you'd like folks to kind of remember?
Well, it's been a slow start. That's kind of the problem.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't get our committee assignments to March, but we also didn't get rules until February.
That's right.
And we also weren't sure what these rules were doing, so everyone was basically spending a couple of months just trying to figure out what to do. And then as a result, it was just very slow go. I mean, people don't realize how important it is to have rules in place so everyone's working on the same page. And then we have something brand new that nobody's working on the same page because we don't know what it's trying to tell us. So, there has not been a whole lot going on regarding major pieces of legislation,
right,
that I can really put a comment on. I mean, we talk about things like, higher education bond bill, MBTA being public employees for purposes of assault. We did
healthcare workers protections, right?
Worker protections. We passed a bill on assisted living. Home healthcare workers, people
Yes.
that home to take care of your elderly folks. We did some licensing for that stuff.
Yep. That's important, actually. That's important. I didn't realize that wasn't regulated. Yeah.
Yeah, we set up a regulatory process for that.
Yeah.
We took a little bit of a shot on assisted living. Well, not truly assisted, but like the terrible incident, the fire down in Fall River, I believe. We have that kind of home care, senior home care housing. We took a look at that issue.
Yeah.
We passed a bill, I think, to do some better regulatory oversight over that stuff. So yeah, we have done things despite what the Globe says. It's just not a massive volume of stuff.
Right.
And I mean, how much that actually rises to the level that the local papers think it's a headline story. It's not like the old days. You remember, I mean, you put any bill out, even if it was a fast period, the Globe would try to write at least a full pager.
Yes.
On a whole lot of different things that's going on. Now they're kind of just blowing over a lot. As I like to say, when I was with Michael Morrissey, when we opened the Globe one day and the Senate budget passed and it was inside the obituary section, I knew it was over.
That would be front page news years ago. Yeah.
That was either branch passing a budget was a headline news when that's how unimportant or sadly how understaffed or how reprioritized the 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 media has become regarding the ability to choose their news as well as manpower to talk about and
Right.
learn about news. And no, dead serious. I mean,
Oh, no, as I understand it, the press room at the State House is virtually vacant now, isn't that right?
it is. And
Yeah,
the State House News Service Christmas party is the only Christmas party now. The other news services used to have receptions.
right,
It wouldn't be like an official work thing. Kind of like, hey, come in, have a cup of coffee and a donut. Well,
right.
I just, appreciate everyone just, cooperating, working with, or fighting with the press, depending on the day. But I mean, professionals understand, the job, right? I mean,
Yeah.
offense, defense, delay, hide, be discovered. I mean, but that isn't the case anymore. And those of us old enough to have read physical paper, remember the State House News was front page news regularly.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um, but I mean, I kind of joke and not joke about it. Once that Senate budget news story hit that back part of the metro section near the obits, it never once again, unless there was a scandal, did this House and Senate budget really make the front page anymore. It was delegated deep, very deep in,
Hmm.
um, because that was how the editorial rooms are reprioritized the news.
Yes. Yeah. It's indicative of a system-wide consolidation throughout the media, really.
Yeah, and I did media for Mike Morrissey when the Senate. So I mean that was part of it too. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a lot of media relationships. Some I actually still have today, Joe, believe it or not. I mean, some
Hmm.
of the media connections I made back then, that are people still working,
Hmm.
that I talked to. And we'll plug the country in Boston again with Scotland Boris, for example. Person I actually spent a lot of time talking to back in the early 2000s. And you know, I I think we're good professional friends and at some level. But I mean, I read the stuff because I know the guy and I know his work. So,
Hmm.
um, again, he's not the only one. There's a lot of other folks
Hmm.
passed
Yep.
actually through both our lives in media, that I keep an eye on nowadays on the line, regarding their stories. Um, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but those kind of interpersonal relationships have also been greatly declined. Uh,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, I know there's no real like business relationships, professional or personal, really with media folks anymore.
I suspect, though, going forward, at least budget-wise, if the federal cuts come to fruition, there'll be a lot more discussion about that in the future.
Oh, it should make more front page news, I would suspect. This
I
consensus,
think so. In being in
yeah,
media myself for 40 years, I'm telling you that that is news.
yeah, I would definitely hope so. The consensus revenue is going to be coming out. The question is about whether to decouple ourselves from the federal government on certain parts of the tax code that's going to cost us revenue. The risk there is that if you start decoupling, all we're doing is trying to return to the status quo prior big, big, beautiful bill thing. So trying to return to a status quo before people feel it, but it looks like a tax increase, so that's bad. I mean, there's a real optics issue. I think people may appreciate that if you even try to maintain the status quo, uh, that people will perceive that as a tax increase, even though try to maintain the status quo.
Well, I mean, the budget's already been approved for the fiscal year, so it's just reshuffling, right?
Well, it's actually a tax code problem. So we're not the only
Yeah.
stuff. Many states have linked uh, chunks of their tax code to the federal code. So when the federal government changes the tax code in certain areas, the state would also follow suit,
Ah.
just for the sake of simplicity. And for many decades, there's either little or no changes in these tax codes. And
Hmm.
I actually don't know where they are. It tends to be in upper income bracket tax codes regarding deductions, and credits and things like that. So I'm not going to pretend to be a tax expert, but supposedly it's going to cost us $650 million in revenue because of the linkage. It's not
Yeah.
uniquely us. Other states have had this problem, and states have been trying to figure out, including red states, how to decouple certain aspects of the tax code from the federal tax code because of potential revenue loss.
Hmm.
And then we have that looming ballot question, which everyone loves to cut taxes from 5% to 4%, which I'm pretty confident makes the ballot. It's going to win by like 70% because
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
everybody loves to cut taxes.
Well, right. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But you cut taxes, you cut services. It's a direct relationship. And as you all learned from the government shutdown, federal government shutdown in October, and there may be one in January 30th coming. So
It's true.
Joe's not done yet on the federal shutdown. you never know how much you needed government till government wasn't there.
It's true, yeah. And just reading recently this week, actually, as you predicted, the so-called millionaires tax, the revenue from that is going down.
Yeah, it takes about 3 or so years for that to kind of really kind of shake its stuff out. All tax laws take about 3 or 4 years to shake out. Same thing might
Mm,
apply to about healthcare is about 5 years, and energy policy is about 5 years to kind of
mm,
shake it out to see what happens. And what's going on, you have a combination issues. People are leaving the state, perhaps permanently, just selling their homes. But if they're selling their homes, the high rent area, so to speak, high income areas should have greater vacancies, and I'm not sure that's actually happening yet. And then people are retiring, so the income does shift down if they're retiring. And the baby boomer generation, I'm an Xer, I'm behind them, but the boomers are retiring. So there's going to be a tax shift there too.
right. Yeah, they're not paying as much income taxes because they're not making as much income.
Yeah, as they move to a different type of lifestyle, that's
Right.
going to be increasing. And of course, there's just general wage issues, right? I mean, yeah, $1 million, is a lot of money. The question is your cost of living and where you live.
Hmm.
So, you may find yourself where your income has dipped below $1 million, especially after adjusted gross income. Not necessarily because you're making less money, but everything that's around you is getting more expensive. And I
Right.
said before, there's also the coupling of certain parts of the tax code, which tends to lean in favor of higher income earners.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and don't forget there are restrictions on that surplus tax can only be used for certain things.
Yeah, it's limited to transportation education purposes. It's supposed to
Right.
be 50-50, but I'll be honest with you, we've been kind of budging the 50-50
Oh,
split. It's
yeah.
like 45-55 sometimes. Sometimes like
In
forty
in in
60.
in favor of what? Education?
It depends on the year.
Oh,
So for example, last cycle we had extra millionaires tax money. We can't rainy day it because it must be spent.
right.
So we actually heavily invested in the MBTA
Yes,
as one front, but during the main budget, we had leaned more in favor of education.
I see.
And some of the things that in education we paid for was universal school meals, which I think is still one of the best things we ever did for children in schools. And the other one was free community college
Yes,
under very specific circumstances. It has a prerequisite of qualification.
right.
That being said, the other side of transportation was a lot of one-time costs that we could do some projects on, but the big chunk of it last cycle was into the MBTA.
Yeah, it's $750 million, I think, as I recall.
Oh yeah, it was monstrous.
Yeah.
The MBTA continues to operate in a structural deficit, but in a structural deficit for a very long time, and COVID just compounded the issue. If you may recall, during COVID, the federal government did provide a bailout for all public
Mm,
transit, but they provided numbers that were not accurate regarding their actual budgets.
hmm.
They were
Hmm.
using budget numbers that were outdated, not the actual cost of doing business at time of, or even the prior year.
Right.
So all public transportation during COVID got a bailout, but it was still it was as if they were all running on a deficit shortage.
Right.
They're running
Yeah.
on deficit budgets. So, you know, I know the T is always going to be a complaint from people. It needs to be on time as essential services. We all understand that. We absolutely do. Uh, it is expensive, and raising fares creates all kinds of anger. And we have not enough employees because nowadays the T is still posting jobs for all levels, and the workforce shortage continues where people have alternative ways to do gig work, thinking of things like Uber and working at home with social media or other things. People are attempting to start their own kind of like local
Hmm.
business or franchises or whatever they're trying to do, as alternatives, particularly younger folks. And then
Yeah.
you have an immigrant shortage coming up because of
Yeah.
deportations. And then you also have people aging out of the workforce or physically unable to do certain types of work where, well, yeah, there are machines now to help you lay down rail for the MBTA when you do rail replacement, but you still need to physically get out there, at 3 a.m. despite the weather to get the work done.
That's right. Yeah, it's a younger person's occupation in that regard, at least for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also have a birth rate shortage because we're Massachusetts, actually the whole Northeast corridor, has a lower birth rate than the rest of the country. So
Mm.
it's a sustainability issue. So, generally in this country, the solution to a small birth rate problem has always been higher immigration. You bring in more people. to offset the lower birth rate, and then people can pay it forward because it means Social Security, Medicare, and taxes. So then
Right.
it makes up the loss on lower birth rate. The United
Yep.
States historically has always had that policy that was the solution to a low birth rate. Low birth rate's not a new problem in this country, but the solution's always been the same, which is not a solution that people want because people in DC don't have any guts to actually do the right thing. They just don't, and that's the problem. They like to, play politics and try and raise campaign money on other people's misery.
Instead of implementing real immigration policy and reform, right?
And I like to say over and over again, I've never seen a group of folks this scared of elections down there. I do understand that it all represents certain demographics, but if you did your work, you do it well, and you're able to keep up with the changing needs of your district, they generally will bring you back to work again at the next election cycle. But this is amazing how politics has changed in a manner, particularly DC politics, where it feels like that over half the seats in Congress are always insecure.
Mm,
It
yeah.
feels, yeah. Generally, the reason you don't have a high incumbency change is because the candidate is doing such a good job. It's not just working for constituencies, but all to do things you need to do in politics to make sure that you're in a secure position. Um, doesn't seem to be a case anymore.
Mm, mm.
It was Dan Ramadi told me if you do a good job, you do the best you can, you put the effort in, voters will see it, and voters will bring you back. And
Sounds pretty simple, right?
Dan Raimondi was a Ward 2 councilor for 20 years, county
Yes.
treasurer. I mean, he knows what he's talking about.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Different topic for a moment here, Tacky. Cannabis consumption cafes.
Yeah, I can't believe they're doing anything over there. I mean, the agency is a mess. They have no proper leadership, and they're trying to put out public policy, which should be slamming the brakes and doing anything right now because there's a distinct chance by end of next year they may not exist anymore and having a job.
Period. End of story.
How speaking of stupid, I mean, the legislature is coming for them. They're going to be those commissioners are going to be unemployed, and they feel the need to do something now. Why? We're going to unemploy you guys.
You heard it here first, folks. As I understand it, it's an opt-in policy. So say if, the Quincy dispensaries, the city would have to have its own policy.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be similar to like running a cafe. The difference is like smoking indoors, right?
Right.
You spend like what felt like decades and decades to get rid of smoking inside, and then when I'll bring back smoking inside, the irony is not lost on me. It's like to say burning ash and sucking it in doesn't matter what you're sucking in is not good for you. But that being said, the idea of a relatively controlled adult only area using cannabis is, I can see the appeal of that. However, what is it, right? Is it a smoke zone? I mean, is the city and town's going to require much more amenities for you to be there? It's not just a place to just eat a brownie or cookie or gummy and then, or, smoking area. And what if you're a person doesn't want to be around smoke of any kind, right? I mean, let's see how the regulations pan out. Let's see how cities and towns want to manage this because just because you are a person that wants to consume cannabis does not mean you want to be sitting next to someone smoking it.
Yeah. So instead of the commission, how do you envision the cannabis industry being regulated?
Well, I actually don't know how it's going to play out right now. My office actually sat in on a call regarding the changing cannabis industry and the potential impacts of the federal government regarding changing banking, which is a big problem because big nationally chartered banks will not support cannabis projects and financing and actually even accepting their money as a bank deposit. So it's really complicated. And we'll see how the Trump administration executive order will actually impact that aspect of it because it's not a law change. If this was a law change, the banking industry moving much faster. Executive order can be reversed or amended by the next president. So it's really more of a temporary issue.
And it can be challenged in court too. Yeah.
Yeah, and banking industry folks are not going to take themselves at risk.
Right.
Because the order is actually direct contrary to federal law, and federal law overrides executive orders.
Right.
Although the Supreme Court may think differently of that these days, but That's a different, longer conversation about the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah, the banks don't want to be in court for anything.
The banks don't want to be involved,
Right,
not
right.
any, not any law of regulation. So in law school, they teach you U.S. Constitution's on top.
Yeah,
Then the next big one is the state laws,
yeah,
and the regulations, and executive orders, and then
right,
you kind of sandwich, inside their state Supreme Courts. It's a little bit quirky because they fit in that zone too, but it's very circumstance specific. Whether U.S. Supreme Court doesn't have jurisdiction. So, but generally that's where they teach in law school. Supreme Court, the courts are top, but U.S. Supreme Court's are top. The laws are next, the regulations are next, and the bottom is executive orders. And executive orders
right.
can change administration. Administration is this
Yep.
president proven. So, I mean, the banking industry would be very hesitant to get involved in something that could change in 3 years, and maybe hesitant in a situation where there's a conflict between a president order and a law that know how to follow.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't get too excited about that executive order. On the flip side, there is a new service in the legal industry in Massachusetts called marijuana bankruptcy.
Oh, news to me.
Yeah, it's I talk about this constantly with folks. There is a saturation of regulatory industry markets
Mm,
where there is no more new customers because they can't produce customers fast enough.
right.
And there reaches a point where you have market saturation. So I was in East Hampton like 3 years back for a wedding, and there were like three marijuana shops all within 1,500 feet of each other.
Wow. Yeah.
Arguments, what's a college town and all that, and East Hampton, that part of East Hampton tends to be a bit more liberal, and you can give me any reason. I mean, it doesn't matter. But at some point, when the economy shifts, where your spending power is down, because now we're still facing inflationary prices,
Hmm.
you have to reprioritize, what you're going to spend. And those shops also have to spend on increased things like wages, insurance, and so forth and so forth. So they also have price increases too. And at some point, the customer basis becomes very static and waiting for a next bump in new customers. And like I said before, it's not like people sitting at home teaching the kids to smoke cannabis. It's generally developed, outside of your upbringing. Almost
Right.
everyone, I think it's for most of us, that's true. It's a product you develop outside your upbringing. And then you also have the fact that, a generation of folks coming up that may not be interested in cannabis. They're not interested in alcohol. And
That's true. Yeah.
alcohol industry continues to complain that cannabis is is a young person thing. Yeah, that's not entirely true either. I don't think that's an entirely accurate statement. It is a cross generational thing. It tends to be the older folks that push through the legalization of cannabis, not the younger.
Hmm. That's true. And they're the they're the ones that can afford it too.
That is correct. The spending power is still strictly on the folks that are second half, the older half of the millennial bracket moving upward. It's not the Gen Alphas or whatever they're calling themselves on now. It's not
I
the
don't I've lost track, but yeah, it's I would say 40 plus.
Yeah, the under 30 crowd doesn't have as much spending power as the over
Right.
30 crowd. So that's kind of part of driving the younger group. So, like I said, there's going to be some marijuana bankruptcy. It's a little more complicated because the license itself doesn't have inherent valuation yet. It's not like alcohol licenses where if there's not a lot of licenses in the quota system, there's a valuation which actually can help in bankruptcy, paying creditors off. And again, the complexity of the banking problem with cannabis makes it much more difficult and trying to understand how to do a bankruptcy too, because it's largely cash driven business, so they're using a state chartered bank with a lot of restrictions on it.
Yep.
So yeah,
And
Mark,
banks don't want to pay fines, for violating rules. Yeah.
oh, banks also don't want to eat any kind of debt, and they don't want to hold on to money they don't know what to do with.
That's right. Yeah. Or is worthless in their eyes. Yeah.
That's correct. So there's a lot of question marks here with the cannabis industry, and yeah, like I said, all the inflationary costs you're facing has a ripple effect to
Mm.
a lot of other industries because of your spending power.
Yep.
And there's the fact that there is becoming a small cottage industry growing of cannabis bankruptcy law. Because you have to go back to the regulators and return the license too, right?
Yep.
There's a
That's right.
whole, they just don't just close up shop and go back, because this isn't a license that goes back to city hall
It's
exactly.
like a liquor license. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah.
Well, liquor licenses go back to the city.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, these go back to the state. Yeah.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
different.
Gotcha.
This is different.
Okay.
So, that's kind of That's kind of the whole thing here.
So you think the legislature is going to step in and abolish the commission?
Well, we already did in the House.
Yeah.
It's waiting for the Senate. We have a conference committee with regarding the Senate's recommendation to see where we're going to go. But I mean, a complete and total reform of the existing commission needs to be done.
Okay, stay tuned, folks. We will keep you updated on that.
We'll keep you updated.
Hey, I just got my natural gas bill, Tacky, and hit the floor when I saw it.
You're not the only one.
I
Um,
know.
it's we talk about the story. The energy prices aren't matching up with our bills, and this is what's troubling me a lot still. Right? You look at natural gas and oil on the global market, and they're not spiking. They're actually
Nope,
kind of going down.
that's right.
But your gas prices continue to be jacking up here locally on natural gas. And I repeat again, heating for natural gas prioritizes over energy generation. So the priority
In the winter.
in the winter, yeah,
Yeah.
that's our priority. Winter priority is that you keep your home warm, and then we'll pay for electricity if we need to reduce natural gas generation. Here we'll buy electricity from other places on the spot market. So I'm not exactly clear what's going on here. I know the deferments from last winter hit this fall, meaning you saw a surcharge from the deferment. You can't just arbitrarily change a gas or electric bill rate system of a utility company without due process. You can't just arbitrarily do it. The rates are set, due process for administrative law hearings need to be done for a rate change. So
Mm,
all they did last time was kick the ball down to a different day. I knew they were going to kick it out. I mean, they did rate work in the AG's office. It's like I don't know how
mhm.
it works. I do know how this works. So they just, kicked a 10% deferment down to your bills today. And then the energy markets are very confusing to me. I just don't understand what's going on. I know the US is one of the biggest exporters of natural gas right now. It's really a combination, not necessarily about making money, but it's a global security issue regarding the Russian-Ukraine war. If we don't get
Right.
gas to Europe in particular, despite the fact they do have a lot of renewable power, but people still have to heat their homes. It's not all 100% electric. Uh, we do a lot of exporting, and the United States is number one in the world right now in exporting oil. People don't realize that. And again, there is a global issue here, and it's been going on for many years. But I'm not clear on the consumption issue because natural gas is not exactly a huge decline in home heating.
Hmm.
Most people aren't going to change their home heating system until the home heating system dies
Right.
and then proceeds to explore options such as heat pumps or natural gas a second time, right?
Right.
Till your system collapses, you're not inclined to change it.
Right. Yeah.
So, and new development is happening, and I know Boston construction's down. But I'm not clear. I really am unclear what's going on here because your distribution rate is not really moving around because the rates have been set. So, you basically spend more, you pay more. But I know there's that one spigot distribution charges, but I'm very confused about the energy markets. We talk about this about gasoline.
Yep. Same thing. That's right. This morning, the oil was like $56 a barrel, so it's down.
Yeah, it should natural gas should be closer to
Should follow suit, right? Yeah.
yeah, it should be closer to like a $2.40 on the cheap side, maybe up
Right.
to like $3.20 in the high rent area.
Right.
Maybe a dollar difference or more inside a high rent area, like Boston near the Pine Street Inn. That's the high rent area. It's
Right.
$1.20 more than a low rent area in Quincy.
Right.
So I'm still very baffled by this.
Yeah.
I'm still not clear because those prices move in sync to each other on a weekly basis.
Right. Yeah. And home heating oil is the same. I mean, in some cases, 4.50 a gallon.
Yeah, and it's actually different oil than
Hmm.
your natural gas oil, but still, the processing and all that doesn't really change that much. And
Right.
in the Northeast region, the use of oil is in decline,
Hmm.
which puts some stretch demand, but it isn't like it's just fall off a cliff level of decline.
Right. Exactly. I think Maine has the highest use of heating oil.
But it makes sense. A lot of rural areas, it's hard to put down. It's hard to put down pipe in rural areas.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. I know the DPU is just this past week actually launching the study the governor mandated.
Well, really, all we can do is really the distribution charge.
Hmm.
But the question is, the small pipe, small wire charge the state has control over, and those are set by law that requires minister law hearing. There's nothing go due process
Hmm.
regarding how they're set up. The question is, how many are going to phase out, how many are going to remove? I mean, The one that most people didn't realize that went away last summer was called stranded costs. That was the result of forced sale of the utility companies of their generation plants as a result of deregulation of electricity.
Mm,
We made them do a forced sale, which then they lost the depreciation valuation, meaning they lost the tax benefits of depreciation, and they also took actual financial losses as a result of a forced sale by the state, which then was passed to ratepayers for basically 28 plus years.
yeah.
So that finally went away in electric charge, but you barely saw it because unless you were looking for it, you wouldn't know it's there. It's
It was pennies. Yeah, pennies for most people. Yeah.
correct, and it's really about finding how many of these pennies that the governor wants to take away. And I'm going to tell you that, the vast majority of those, are the ones that are very popular with particularly groups that are trying to end fossil fuel usage, and it's going to be
Hmm.
popular with environmental groups.
Yeah, so there'll be a strong lobby for sure. And, don't forget we've lost some nuclear power. The wind energy is in question right now. So that all has an impact too.
Absolutely. On the electrical side,
Right.
the ending Pilgrim Power Plant created a huge vacuum
Yes,
power. That was actually our backup power for Quincy if the northern
that's
line
right.
of Everett went down. So if Everett had a problem, because of our geographic location against the water, we don't have a lot of choices west of us. So Pilgrim was the backup in case Everett went down. Pilgrim would ramp up. Well, with the loss of Pilgrim, if there's any power loss north of us, it's just everything south us and south on the way to Plymouth is going to be like disastrous. And Brayton Point is in the South Coast. Most people don't realize that was the last dirty, dirty, dirty ones in the state, which was
Hmm.
completely shut down as opposed to a food conversion. And that's problematic because that's another gaping hole against the water where you have no
Right.
generation. So, bringing electricity in from like the western parts, southern and northern parts from outside the state, this makes it more expensive for you and me. It's cheaper to have generation close to you. The windmills were closer, for example, but Hydro Quebec is not. And energy is not people, turn on the light switch, they expect it to be there, but they don't really think about how it gets there. And it's actually convoluted and complicated because of physics, right? It
Yeah,
moves through lines get hot, you have loss.
right.
The laws of physics apply. And
Yeah,
so
yeah. It's kind of an on-demand commodity, right?
is on demand. Utility companies are required still by law, both state and federal law, that if you're hooked up to the utility company, they must make sure that your electricity is on at all time, regardless of anything. So they have to buy, or at least buy enough and have standby power
Hmm.
is ready to go, in situations of high demand, and it involves a lot of forecasting. So ISO New England and utility companies do have a lot of data and try to forecast out, what the potential usage are. And it's a forecast, it's not a
Hmm.
prediction.
Hmm.
So, during the hottest month of August, there's a spike in
Hmm.
energy costs because of the air conditioning.
Right.
February historically is the coldest month in New England, and there should be a spike in energy then too. And then,
Yep.
they try to have their purchase agreements ready in certain time period, but it was like a 5 day chill in the month of October. You're going to see a monster spike because they're going to have to go for spot purchases and as opposed to pre-existing contracts. It's very complicated in the sense that you're trying to make sure that your lights never go off, um, and trying to keep the costs low. But you can't predict how things are going to be. People love to say they know, but it's always Monday morning quarterback.
That's exactly right. It's easy to say after it's happened. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of the big challenges associated with energy rockets. And most of us here do not face brownouts or blackouts.
Hmm.
Then a storm or a car accident or a main, like in Quincy, there's a lot of shifting on the rest since the 2010 rainstorms. The ground's still shifting around, pipes break. But I mean, there's really fortunate here that we've never had a brown or blackout caused by energy supply shortage. Other parts of the country have dealt with brownouts and
Oh,
blackouts in different.
California, notably. Yeah.
100%. I was thinking that too. California, when they did deregulation of energy, they didn't do it correctly.
Right.
As a result, they can't build new generation, and the states around them can't build it fast enough to support California.
Right.
They have rolling blackouts and rolling brownouts, and if you have medication needs to be in the fridge, if you're on dialysis, if you have different kind of medical machines, I mean, you're gonna have to buy yourself a generator.
That's right. Yeah. So you're right. We don't have, we may have a couple of hours inconvenience around here because of the storms and accidents, but that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you lose your power for like 3 minutes at a time or 2 minutes at a time because of something happening, just a glitch in the system, and stuff happens. But rarely do you see like an extended brand of blackout. Although, this fall my capacitor outside my house blew.
Mm,
It had that massive pop noise, and again, that stuff needs to be safe because they could catch on fire.
right.
So, I mean, that's also just general wear and tear of equipment because the equipment up here is very old
Right.
compared to the West Coast.
Yeah. And I think the salt air has a, impact on them as well.
Yeah, we live in the water.
Right.
I mean, I was talking to somebody else this week about underground electric cables. Hate them. Just absolutely hate them. People love
Yeah.
them for aesthetics, but we live on the water. We have a high water table of a high salt content. Sure, they're in plastic, but I mean, nothing lasts forever in the ground
That's
shift.
that's right.
You know,
Eventually they'll be corroded. Yeah.
speaking of microplastics going to our system, utilities that use plastic does last longer than iron or steel. However, the ground does shift, and it doesn't matter what the material is. Eventually, if it shifts the wrong way, it's going to break.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I love the fact that little microplastics, but keep putting more of it in the ground in utility work as opposed to steel alloys or iron alloys. But besides the point, and we're along the water, and anyone knows that you're in the area there's a high salt content. It doesn't matter what the material is. Eventually, over time, it's going to get you. And again, the ground keeps shifting on us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, I wonder if we should comment on the two tragedies that have occurred this past week, Tacky. One close to home at Brown University and the other in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, the brown one's very troubling, obviously, because it's very close to home. We obviously a place full of college campuses, not just in Boston, but in greater New England. And yeah, I mean, no one wants to, have a situation where you get a call that your kid's been killed or severely injured. And the problem, of course, and it's important because we need a motive. You got a motive, you know where to find a person. And it's hard because people like to know why you did it.
Hmm.
And the person's out there. Unlike the United Healthcare shooting situation with the Luigi guy, that's in the central part of the city. You have to get in and out of that city. It's hard to get in and out of that city. I've been to Providence. I think you've been to Providence. I think many of us have been to Providence. It's a small city.
Oh
It's
yeah. Yeah.
You can get in your car and can be over the Massachusetts border from Rhode Island in Providence in not even 20 minutes.
Oh yeah. I mean, 95 runs right through the middle of it, so it's easy access. Yeah.
Yeah, you can be in Connecticut or Massachusetts very quickly. You're not trying to cross through a New York City sized place to try to escape.
Right.
And we learned during the Boston bombing that's very tragic, horrific situation. That even getting out of Boston when it's in lockdown is a lot harder than it looks.
Hmm. Hmm.
When all that 9/11 terrorist money the federal government gave us actually proved to be can be done, proved it does work
That's right.
for that training.
Yeah.
And but Providence again, it's one person in the winter where everybody's bundled up. Clearly had a very specific mindset, going to a very specific place, to do ghastly things.
Yeah.
And again, no motive. There's just no rationale what's going on here. It doesn't have to be a sane reason, but it has to be a reason.
Right.
And that's what's very troubling here too. And again, it's such easy getting out. Again, the difference between a small city in a small state versus a big city, right? It's very different than how these things work. It's not one size fit all.
Yeah. And the law enforcement truly is hoping that the public can help in this matter.
Well, these type of situations, the shooter has to slip up. They have to do something,
You
and
hope.
you
Tell
hope.
somebody that reports it or post something that exposes them. Yeah.
Well, United Health murder. I mean, the shooter was caught in video camera, at various hostels and locations.
Hmm.
And because I need to show identification, they actually have to see your face for a bit to show you can, you have your ID and your credit card, right?
Right.
In this instance, like I said, you can be in a car and out of the state in 20 minutes,
Oh, easily. Yeah. Yeah.
driving at a cruise speed of 45 miles an hour, none the wiser, right?
Hmm.
And be out
Hmm.
of state in 20 minutes. And
Yeah.
that's the big difference here. That's the huge difference. So Australia, I've not been to a Bondi Beach in Sydney. I've been to Melbourne, but not that beach. And I know very little about it. I didn't realize it was such an important local and touristic attraction. And again, it shows how two people and with half a plan, with the right firearms, and clearly trained to using these firearms, can just
Mm,
cause mass murder in a very short time period in a crowd of people. And
yeah.
they clearly were shooting Jews. I mean, they
Hmm.
were looking for specifically Jews to kill. And they weren't exactly, up close and personal shooting. These guys had long rifles. The video I saw, where they're in the right place, right spot to kill as many people as possible using a scope.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they ran into a crowd with, handguns and then proceeded to, find Jewish people to shoot. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
shooting people at a distance, so you have to be able to find what you want to kill.
Yeah.
And kudos to the immigrant from Syria, the
Hmm.
fruit vendor that got shot risking his life to take down one of the gunmen.
Yep.
He saw an opportunity, and it's people doing good things because it was the right thing to do, not
Yeah.
because
Oh,
anything
could
else.
certainly save lives by doing that. Yep.
Yeah, just did the right thing at his own risk. Yeah, very clearly saved some lives. Um, but I mean, hate, is still out there, and as like say, I was talking to a group on Saturday. Asian American hatred is far from gone. I mean,
Mm,
this hasn't bubbled in the news. And anti-Semitism, and a lot of Asian racism, believe it or not, have a lot of correlation together.
mm,
So, there's actually a lot. If you think about anti-Asian issues in this country, there's some correlations. Not identical, but there's some similarities. Like, for example, you can treat it as like a persistent outsider. You're always the foreigner. You suffer. We all suffer from a similar amount of minority mentality. The outside imposes what we are as opposed to who we are. There's foreign governments. When you're foreign government, like China does something bad, they think because you're Chinese, you're part of the government. Same thing with the Israeli government. A lot of people hate the Israeli government, including Jewish folks. But people here assume that because you're the same nationality, I mean, a racial makeup, that your nationality is really committed to a foreign government, not the government you're living in.
mm.
It's like even in the Olympics, for example, when I get a phone call many years ago from the ledger that that you do at the Beijing Olympics. It was before Beijing. They decided to do a story about how do Chinese people feel about having Chinese athletes participate. And I was born here. I watch American athletes participate, not Chinese athletes, and it was very kind of like that. Well, you're born here, but you're not really one of us. Question.
Ah, interesting. So the assumption was that just because of your racial background, you feel an affinity toward them.
Correct. And
Uh,
that's kind of a BS situation, right? I mean, Paul Watanabe, Professor Watanabe at UMass Boston, loves the example of Kwan, the ice skater. When
mhm.
ABC announced her as a Chinese national, not an American.
Oh, I don't recall that. Wow.
Yeah, people don't recall that one, but that's an example of one. So it's more prevalent, and the Jewish community actually have similar, well, not identical, have similar situations.
Right.
Hey, that's why I tend to don't like hate groups, and I don't like people speaking ill of other people, thinking that there's a rationale to justify those positions of hate, because they'll start using things like model minority. They start using things like national versus ethnic. They start using the perpetual outsider. It's your fault that you're not part of inside. You should convert. We don't have
I
to
see.
accommodate you, right? You must change, not us. And those are just simple examples of that, right?
Yeah.
Um, so these are uncommon perceptions. So, I mean, United States, I mean, obviously there's a heightened awareness regarding Hanukkah, but also there's uh, the federal government has been stopping anti-Semitic attacks before it happens. It doesn't make the news. It has made the news. I don't think it's got a lot of attention.
Hmm. Yep.
I understand there's a lot of problem in the Department of Justice. I get it. There's a large issue here. I have a lot of concerns about how much DOJ resources have been reallocated to ICE. The more resources you put into ICE from DOJ means at some point some bad guy is going to slip through the cracks on monitoring and investigation to stop before it happens. But Southern California, the FBI stopped a potential terrorist attack. They did another thing in New York City, preparing, stopping anyone for the New Year's Eve celebration attack.
Mm,
will not be the last one, but as I kind of alluded to just a minute ago, that if you start reallocating more and more resources away from DOJ, something's going to slip through. And
right.
the FBI, has been stopping a lot of crimes before they actually happen at home terrorism levels, and they're homegrown terrorists. This isn't like the Russians sending spies in; these are homegrown. And while they've always existed, the political environment just makes it worse.
Yeah. I hate to end on that note, but we're at the end of the hour, Jackie.
Well, on a happy note, it's going to be warmer by the end of the week. It looks like it
That,
might get 50. So I
that's
mean, the good
true.
weather may bring us to some hope of a slightly better situation. But yeah, no, I mean, happy notes. I just thought about Rob Reiner now. That's not a happy note.
Oh, no, no,
That's
no.
another sad note.
Yeah.
There's another sad note. Well, huh.
When you have to
Getting
think about it, that's
I
not
know
good.
when you get to like 50, when your big highlight of the week is the weather turning 50 degrees, perhaps by your week's end, that's a high note. That's kind of sad, actually, when you think about it. Um, yeah, I mean, it seems like it's like tough all around, in
Yeah.
particularly the last several months, more than anything else. I mean,
Well, what I can think of, at least in your district, you've got social service agencies that are doing God's work, Interfaith, QCAP, helping folks in need this time of year, Salvation Army, as well. So, I mean, amidst all the tragedy, there are good things going on for people who need it.
yeah, and also it's a good time to do a quick consumer reminder. Be aware of scams. They come up heavily during the holidays, heavily during the tax periods. The federal government, whether taxes or immigration, does not look for you by telephone, nor do they ask you for money. If you got text saying "Hi, Tacky, how are you?" and you don't recognize the number, it's a scam. Always check the email on the from section because the email is nonsense looking. It is not from their corporation, and these businesses do not do email in a manner that requires personal data. And obviously gift card scams too.
Hmm.
Be aware that people try to get money out of you in exchange for gift cards, and artificial intelligence has made it more better than ever. And whether it be email or text messages or social media messages, the tech companies are trying to keep out those scams. So think twice before responding. Think three times or more before there's money involved. And if someone wants something out of you, the answer is no. If it's a government in particular, it's probably not us. It's people's pretending. Um, just a quick consumer thing. And you're right. Local services are going to have a tough time. Needs are coming up. Unemployment at federal levels at 4.6,
Yes.
which means the state's probably closing at 5%, given the way that things are going. I haven't seen the state number, but I mean, social services do incredible number of work. And not advocating for any particular one, find one that works for you and, be supportive. Um, and there's not even a lot of movies coming out this holiday season. I'm thinking about it. Generally, we hit the like pre-Oscars deluge of films. You get like the drop like 20 movies between like Thanksgiving and Christmas for
Yeah.
the pre-Oscars, right? They're trying to interview. So I'm not even thinking there's anything really good on that I can
Not
think of.
not blockbuster material, at least. No.
No, no. I mean, I need a fantasy getaway mentally. But
Escape movie. Yeah.
yeah, I do not need serious issues right now. I
Right.
need an escape film, and I can't think of any big escape films. I mean,
Well,
we got
read a good
Wicked to
book
get
then.
through. Yeah. Yeah, no, but I mean, obviously, people have friends and family at home. My family will be in again for Christmas. I got to cook again. So I was hoping for a quieter Christmas and not have to cook for 10. Um, but yeah, no, I wish everyone a happy Christmas, New Year's, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. And obviously, start 2026. And you're in the business of media, I'm in the business of politics, and there's always going to be something interesting happening right off the bat next year.
That's right. And we will always talk about it here. Good time to tell folks how to get a hold of you, Jackie.
617-722-2370, 617-722-2370. Hit a button, someone will get the message. It is not my suite. Be patient with the automated system. If the reception person is not picking up the phone at the time, Tacky.chan at emmahouse.gov, tackey.chan at emmahouse.gov. I am getting a lot of unemployment calls, sadly, as speaking, trying to keep it a high note, but that's what we're getting a lot of right now. We have Facebook, State Representative Tacky Chan, with a corresponding Instagram. Do not follow me on X anymore. We do not get enough traffic on that to justify maintaining that social platform. TackyChan.org, resource page, contact page, find a phone number. You don't need to need me if you can find it yourself. MUlegislature.gov. You can follow my bills, my progress, my hearings, legislation, create an account, create your own setups, highly advised. QATV Hero Joe, trying to get together once or 2 weeks, although the holidays are here. At QATV, I'm sorry, yeah, QATV at QATV.org, QATV at QATV.org. You got a burning question for me, and you want Joe to do your dirty work. He's happy to do that for you. And obviously, keep up the local news. I tend to support my local news channels more than other ones. And, I can say, be good to each other, have a good holiday, and, it is what you make of it. So, that's about it. So, yeah, happy holidays, happy New Year.
Thank you so much, Tacky. The same to you, your staff, and your family. We'll check with you in 2026.